Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Inspired Action, where we dive into the most pressing leadership challenges and hope to inspire you to take a more coach-centered and people-focused approach to leadership. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and it's time to get started with our three amazing guests for today. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Inspired Action. I'm your host, Kyle Pertuis, and I'm here with three more amazing guests today to answer this question. So how would you balance transparency with loyalty if your team is sensing some type of hesitation? Really looking forward to this insight and answers. But first, let's do a quick intro. First of all, we have Jasmine Horne, hailing from Atlanta, Georgia, with over 14 years of experience in senior human resource business partner leadership, and most recently building and scaling best-in-class emerging talent programs. Jasmine is passionate about the employee experience, has led numerous complex change initiatives, integrated mergers and acquisitions, and built performance-driven cultures across manufacturing, R&D, and many other corporate environments. Welcome, Jasmine.
Thank you.
We have Tracy, Trottenberg, Kansas, and I'm just going to say somewhere between Marina Del Rey and Schroon Lake, New York. Does that cover it, Tracy, pretty good?
Yes,
Tracy,
you covered the range.
Yeah, she is a seasoned mentor, master trainer, award-winning speaker that specializes in integrated feminine leadership, conscious communication, and spiritual embodiment. With over 30 years spanning both corporate and entrepreneurial worlds, she holds the holders and helps individuals integrate their authentic selves to step into their highest leadership and connect with their deepest purpose. And last but not least, Mark Cunningham out in Salt Lake City, Utah. Mark serves as the VP of Communications at the Libertas Network, where he oversees communication efforts for various projects and brands, including Libertas Institute policy work, the Children's Entrepreneur Market, community programs, and much more. Throughout Mark's career, he's led comprehensive marketing efforts to educate the public on important policy issues, served as a main point of contact for news and print media, as well as direct short and long-term communication strategies. Welcome to all of you.
No, I mean, I think when you talk about this, I think it's about what you put in before that. And if you're, you have to be candid with the people that work for you who work on this project. Of course, there's always a balance between transparency and loyalty. But I think that you can there's always a fine line to do where you can be honest with them and say that without letting them know everything. But the key is, we all are in this together. We are trying to win and saying, we want this to be successful no matter what it is. So let me tell you this is how I feel, and I want to be as transparent as possible with you, but also understand this is what is decided. We're not talking about going back and forth in this now. We want to really go, full steam ahead. But, I think we should be measuring things along the way. If something's not working, we need to bring this to the person who made the decision to leadership. It doesn't, like I said, doesn't have to be, we're doing it this way. That's all there is to it. Any good organization will function where you're testing things. You don't just say, we're going to do this, and then 9 months later, it's done. Did it work or not? You're testing things along the way. You're seeing how things are working. So I think having that communication and what Tracy said too is, if you really have a safe space to talk about these things, people will feel comfortable saying, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Or, how do we make this better? So I ultimately think honesty is probably the most important thing. And if you don't have, a boss or whoever, a decision maker who's willing to let you be, at least somewhat candid with your team, it might not be a great place to work. I think that, you have to have that same buy-in from your CEO to say, yeah, I know you don't completely agree with this. So you can be honest, don't trash it and say, oh, this is the worst idea I've ever heard. But you can say, hey, I do have some concerns, but we want to make this work as good as possible. And we want to make sure that, this is something we're representing the company well when we do this.
Yeah, that leads back to what she said, right? What Tracy said around having that expectation, and even the psychological safety piece is if you have that established early and often in the culture of the organization, that there's an expectation that that's the kind of thing that's going to come up, right? Absolutely. Yeah. Tracy, what would you add? Or Jasmine, either one.
Do you want to go ahead?
It
Go ahead,
doesn't matter.
Jasmine.
I'll go. So I can piggyback off of what Mark said. And I think that honesty was one of the things that I would say. Honesty is what you do. You're honest with transparency and loyalty. That's how you balance the two when the group is hesitant. But how you are honest and how you portray that really matters. And so I think as a leader, especially with HR and change and decisions that are made, responding with empathy is really where it's at. And if you can pull a story in, that contributes to a time when you felt that way that the team feels, it really calms things down and it really helps them understand, my leader is, loyal to the team to a sense, but we also know that there's a business that we have to move forward with, and there's an alignment that we have to reach the common goal. So be transparent as possible, but respond with empathy.
Yeah. And we've all worked for people who ride the fence, right? They're just trying to keep the peace on either side, and you don't ever get to really what's going on or what their position is, right? If there's a
Right.
position as opposed to a perspective. And with that, I'll jump over to Tracy. How would you close this out?
I love what both Mark and Jasmine shared. And I feel like it sort of circles back to this, like who you're being as a leader, and what you're really about as a leader. And that's where the context for me is so important. If the context is being a cohesive team, or at least creating, again, a safe space where disagreement can happen or disappointment can happen and the conversations can move, and there's the trust of, and we're all in this together, like we have a higher context that we're playing with, and we can have the conversations, and making it safe to have those kinds of conversations. And as the leader, you're going back and forth. So I'd say that happens on both sides, representing the team, like when with the team, representing the higher leadership, and with higher leadership, and still representing and holding the team. So I think it's a capacity to hold the layers of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I agree,
Well,
empathy, compassion, and still trusting and, showing up, forthcoming.
yeah. Fully taking responsibility for the one thing you have control over. And that's how you show up as a leader, right? Because all of those things are great. Honesty, compassion, empathy, integrity, all the things that we can throw buzzwords and put words on a wall and call them values. But how you show up is what people see and what they remember, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, you guys, good stuff. I know we could probably talk for another hour, but that's all the time we have for today's Inspired Action. Thank y'all so much. Be sure to join us on LinkedIn every Thursday at noon Central, and anytime right here on our YouTube channel at MindFit Coaching. Thanks again, you guys, for joining me.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap for another edition of Inspired Action, the Leadership Forecast. We're so grateful for our guests today and the impact they're making with the work they do. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel to watch the longer version of this episode, and be sure to like, comment, connect with, and follow me and each of our guests. You'll find all of our links in the caption of this video. Thanks for watching, and be sure to tune in every Thursday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for new episodes.